Hey everybody, Mike from Games Play Badly, and today on Session 0 we interview Chris from Status Effect Games. He has a brand new module coming out called One Night at the Inn. It's a perfect supplement for those people who love inns, who doesn't? I mean, we use them in all of our adventures, I'd imagine, and who want something that's easy to pick up, easy to read, and easy to use. It's what I think a lot of us would call a sandbox module. So if you like all that stuff, this interview's for you. And by the way, I have a new shirt from gemfirefly.com. If you like Gem Firefly, go to gemfirefly.com and use our code at checkout, badly15, for 15% off your order. Let's get chatting with Chris. That interview starts now.
You have to journey
So
to
Chris, I have
or
to
not,
cut you off.
Yeah.
I wasn't recording any of that.
Oh. No. Yeah, let's do it again. It's no problem.
No, it's going to be even better this time, I guarantee it.
We'll see.
I don't know. That was pretty spot on. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. Hey, Chris, how are you?
I'm doing well.
All right, I have to preface this for the audience because Chris and I talked for about 15 minutes and I realized I wasn't recording anything. So here we go. Take two. Take two. Chris, you've done some. I love what you've done. You sent me a preview of your supplement, and I absolutely love it. It's called One Night at the Inn, and it is fantastic. I mean, from the standpoint of the inn is a quintessential starting point for any role-playing game. It is where characters meet, where adventure starts. Why don't you tell me more about that?
Yeah, I wanted to create this supplement for a while, and I love the idea of fantasy inns. I wanted to make a book that was very helpful to storytellers, narrators, dungeon masters, so that they could quickly create inns in their fantasy worlds if they needed one. So unlike some other supplements, it's not that elaborate, the settings. It's really a tool so that you can create your own custom inns in your world. Obviously, there's lots of characters and there are settings in there, but they are designed to be modified and useful in the dungeon master setting, you know. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm glad I've had a lot of great feedback from all of the people that have read it already. So I'm really pleased about that. And our campaign is doing very well on Kickstarter. So
yeah, I mean, as I was reading through, I mean, every inn definitely had its own personality. You did it in such a way, especially with the artwork, where while they're not locked into a specific terrain or setting. Like there is an inn that is in a deserty, sandy type area. You know, you have other ones that are set in different areas. Obviously, those could be changed. But what I found was that there were some really good starting points for people, especially if you're a new DM or new to DMing. You can look at this, you can really customize it, and make it your own. Yeah.
Yeah, there's been a whole lot of people that I think are discovering Dungeons & Dragons for the first time, or any, if they're D&D fans, getting into other fantasy role-playing games. Mm-hmm. And I really created it more for them, so that they could encounter these new ideas. But it really is a tool that's made to be changed and used so that you can create your own settings. I deliberately made 6 inns to start that are very different as far as the background. There's a dwarven inspired inn, mm-hmm. and an elvish inspired inn, and one that's a lonely outpost really in the mountains. And that was all delivered to give people options. It's really, the book's about giving people different options, different NPCs they can use, different menus. Try to mix it up as much as I could.
Yeah, so. The menus are fantastic. I was getting hungry just reading through them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I put some like fantasy twists on the familiar dishes that anybody could understand. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with those. I would love to expand on them, and I may still do that. We'll see what we can get added to the book before it actually gets printed.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this earlier when I wasn't recording, but that's what we call a supplement.
Yeah, 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 or a second edition. Yes,
Right, right,
exactly.
yeah, exactly, yeah,
An
right.
expanded edition.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
One of the things I really loved about reading through were not only the kind of the cast of characters, the NPCs who really could be plucked out of that inn and put anywhere. The innkeepers all had an interesting background as far as how maybe they became innkeepers, things like that. I found those stories really helpful for a DM to kickstart a tale. It kickstarts your imagination and helps you write for that inn.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to. Jokingly, I put the stats for the book up on the Kickstarter campaign, and one of the things I said was 20 NPCs, but that didn't count the innkeepers, which I think I fleshed out pretty well. As 6 different characters to go with these 6 inns, and they have their own backgrounds and motivations. And I had a lot of fun with that. I wanted to do very different characters, and I think I succeeded on that. But again, too, I also didn't want to create such deep storylines that readers and dungeon masters couldn't take that character into a different direction if they wanted to, or expand on them. So I really had to skate like this edge where it was like, okay, I want this unique setting, but I don't want to make it so unique that players will feel that they're stuck using that, and they couldn't change it. So the book is definitely meant to be a tool that people can use and change around and make their own settings out of it. So
yeah, I mean, and one of the other things. Well, I mean, obviously, cheers. There is a table for drinking responses. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. I didn't want to get too adult with this book, but I made so I put several random tables in there, and my first thought was not to do anything I'd already seen, and I'm sure somebody has done a response to players imbibing too much alcohol, but that was one I hadn't seen very often, so I wouldn't include that. And then I also wanted to include just some unusual situations that might come up. So I figure most people that buy these books and have supplements have their loot table all set up and ready to go, and like they might have a random NPC table ready to go. So I definitely didn't want to do those ones. I wanted to create my own. So, and I think I created some good ones. Actually, we hit a stretch goal in the Kickstarter campaign, so. We're going to add some more tables in there. I know people really like those. I like them. So it is a sandbox book. It's not a railroad book. Those are actually new terms to me. I never, I've been DMing for a long time and I never use those terms. And then I saw them pop up on the internet, I don't know, maybe a year ago. And I was like, oh, I never heard of a railroad campaign, and realized I'd been doing that most of the time. And then I got like paranoid. I was like, oh, I wonder if my players don't like that, So when I wrote this book, I said, okay, well, I'm going to make a sandbox book. And that's what it's for. It is a book that you can just take off your shelf and open up and just immediately use to create your own inns for your setting. It's not a book that you open up and have to read from beginning to end and say, okay, well, these are the things that are designed for me, but they're not my things,
Right.
So.
Yeah. Again, I think it's. For creative DMs, that book, every NPC in there is, you can pluck them out and put them somewhere else. The innkeepers can be modified. I liked how you kept everything very surfacey. And there wasn't a lot of deep backstory, because again, that means you know what? Let's say you want to. I didn't check to see. I don't think there are stat blocks for the innkeepers, but maybe one of the innkeepers is an old adventurer, and you want to
Right.
drag him out on the road with you. You never can tell, or her, for that
Right.
matter.
Right. Yeah, I wanted to keep it rules agnostic, so I didn't use any stat blocks at all, and that made me very nervous because I know some people want those for sure.
Right.
But I also think that that narrows down what your character can be, what your NPC can be. They can't, they can either be an adventurer or they can be a commoner, and there's really no two ways about it. So yeah, I deliberately left the stat blocks out. I did just do some really, as you said, like some surface area type characters without getting too deep. Because I have a lot of books in my collection, and I found like if I have actually another book in my collection that's all about inns, and in that book it describes an inn and it tells you the country and it's in, it tells you the city it's in, and it says this is the weather and these are the specific people that'll be here, and that's really great if you want to use that, but it doesn't leave a lot to change.
Right.
It doesn't let you get in there and actually get your hands dirty and create your own setting. It is a done setting. So I wanted this to be, modifiable.
Well, yeah, you and I have both been DMing for a long time, and that's one thing that I love. And I was mentioning this earlier when we were talking. Was I just had an adventure where this one inn that I created from scratch. I mean, I normally I'll use modules as a framework, but typically most of that stuff is modified and ripped apart, and I do most of the writing myself. So it's nice having that option of saying, you know what, I don't feel like going through that entire process right now. I need a quick place. I need a quick person, and you can go to this. And for those people who are willing to put in the effort, they can go through and expand on it. But otherwise, it's pretty well put together just to use right out of the box.
Yeah. I mean, I think you could definitely use any of the inns and the suggest. That's why I have it. I say suggested menus and suggested encounters that are at the inn. But you can definitely just grab all those and use them, and it'll work out. I promise you.
Yeah, right.
You might need to do a few stat blocks, but other than that, it's actually raring to go. But I also wanted to make sure that people could very easily, tear it apart and put their own characters in there and stuff like that. I added I mentioned I have some books, and I don't have every RPG book, but this one it was important to me that the inns had maps. I know sometimes that you have your inn and there's no maps, so I wanted to include maps for all the inns so that you could very easily use those right away, put your characters and your players in there and move them around and get physical, with the inn. So that was really important.
I love the fact that they're in there. I do, because a lot of times, I mean, when inns tend to be theater of the mind, people don't normally do maps for them. And so it can get rather confusing, especially if a bar fight breaks out, as to where you're at and what you can duck behind,
Right. I ran a part of this. The idea is actually a couple years old, because I ran a one-shot adventure that was on a dry erase mat but just at the very beginning, I didn't tell the players that the adventure would take place at the inn. The entire thing, the whole session was going to be at the inn, and there was going to be a fight, or they were going to find loot or whatever. They thought they were going on to do some other mission, and it worked really well. And that I took that idea, and expanded on it basically, and that was why I included the encounters in this as well. I to my knowledge, and I'm sure there's something out there that I've missed, because I don't have every book, but there's not a lot of books that include in specific encounters.
Right.
And I wanted to do ones that were like, not only, this isn't a mission to do outside of the inn. This is actually, to do this encounter in the inn, have this fight in the inn, or, get lost in the inn, find treasure in the inn, that sort of thing.
Right. I loved all. I mean, I went through it, not with a fine-tooth comb, obviously, but I went through it. I looked for things that I would want to use immediately, and I found it all. So, I mean, I think
Yeah.
you did a great job, and the artwork is actually very good.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I hooked up with a guy, an artist that is local to Pittsburgh. His name's Dylan Macco. You can check him out on Instagram. He's got a lot of fantasy art that he's doing. He's a young guy, but I think he's really going to be great. So
Yeah.
and he was willing to work with me, and so we kind of teamed up on this one.
Yeah, one of my favorite pieces I at least saw in the preview was it was almost like a fresco of just about every type of humanoid together drinking.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought that was fantastic. It was just really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I actually I was drawn to him because he has what I remember as the classic Dungeons and Dragons kind of art. Because I had Dragon magazines, and I had my big thing was I had a lot of second edition books, and a lot of that had the black and white drawings, and the dwarves back then are not what anybody today would think dwarves look
Right,
like.
right.
You know what I mean? They were how I remember dwarves. Was like, no, that's how a dwarf looks. They weren't as muscular. That's the big thing. They were never as muscular, and they all
Right.
kind of had bellies on them.
Yeah.
And when I saw his artwork, it reminded me of that classic form, and I said, no, I want to do that.
Mhm.
So don't shed that. I said, this is what I want to do. So
Right.
this is what we're gonna do. And he's working on stuff now because again we got enough funding that I'm paying for more art for him. So there's going to be more
That's awesome.
included in the book. So
Yeah, I mean, I love the maps. I love the innkeepers. The NPCs are a hoot, if I may say so. Some of the encounters are actually. There are some encounters in there where I'm like, man, that would be very interesting to run.
yeah. I'm actually afraid of them. I was like, I don't know if this might go. I think they're the kind of encounters I like. They're the ones that can go really wrong. I'm just like this. Like the players might not get this at all, or they're gonna get deep really fast on this. I always want to, I wanted to do something different. I feel like there's so many books out there that I really try not to do something I've seen before, or at least try to take it in enough of a different direction that'll be fresh for people.
Right.
So I hope I succeeded with that. I actually, towards the end, the thing I was most paranoid about was the encounters. But I think it'll be fresh enough for people where it might spark them a little bit, so they can, even if they don't use them as they're written, they will say, okay, well, I don't want to do that, but here's what I can do with this, and that'll be just as good, to me. I'd love to hear that. So.
Yeah, I mean, and no spoilers, but not every encounter in a bar has to be a bar fight. So.
Right. I mean, I think there's two that could end up being bar fights, but honestly, that was the one thing I was like, well, anybody can do that, so I don't want to do that. You know, there's a lot of magical hijinks.
Yeah. Right.
But I like almost all the encounters. Like, oh, you don't even have to have a fight to figure this one out. But I could see it ending up that way anyway if somebody makes a mistake. So it's I hope people get a kick out of them. I think they're fun.
I know I will, just because for one of them in particular, I'm going to make my players act it out, which means they need to have full beverage containers for that. So.
Right.
And that'll be
right.
very, very interesting. Well, and here's the thing is, so one of the things I was thinking about when I was going through everything was inns can be very tropey, right? And I thought you did such a wonderful job of bringing them to life and not making them this kind of, I don't know, this kind of throwaway situation. Because I think that every inn that you have is something that characters are going to remember and want to return to, and you can build that in. I'm thinking just for myself, I would build that in as like the crux of, a multi adventure campaign. Like this might be either like base of operations, or where they always end up at the end of the day, or they always go back there because whatever. I mean, I think you've done such a good job with that they're not throwaway, they're not forgettable, they're customizable, and I think it makes me rethink Not really, because I love inns and I treat them with
Yeah.
they're sacred in my book. But I think some people throw them away like tissue paper. So
Right. Right. Yeah, I wanted to explore some things with trapdoors and hidden passages and just I actually have I still haven't filled it in. There's an empty room. I think there's 2 empty rooms in ones that are just like put whatever you want in here, things like that. In the book, I mention whether you have them on the map or not, or if you want to make your own map, I mention making sure you know where all the exits and entrances are when you do these adventures, which I think in castles and in dungeons, I think players think of that stuff, but then they get in the inn and they think everything's going to go fine. They might relax too much and then realize, oh no, I don't, I don't know how I'm going to get out of here now, kind of thing. So I want them to kind of be in those situations where they're not sure because they didn't think of it, so they didn't prepare. And so now it's, oh, you do need to escape the inn. No, it caught fire, so now you need to get out of here.
Right.
And they might realize that's a big problem if they're in the Dwarven Inn and there's only one door out, So if they get stuck on the second floor of my Dwarven Inn, there's they can bust the stone wall if they want. I mean, they have to figure something out, So I really wanted to create those kinds of settings that were, like you said, I think people think that inns are tropey, or like, oh, we can go out the back door, we can go through the kitchen. Like, no, I didn't put an exit in there, so now you got to rethink that, But there is another exit, that you might not even realize is there. So
right.
I definitely want players to search the inn. I want players to get, like I said, get a little lost in there. And I think Dungeon Masters should build them bigger and kind of do some different things with them. So
yeah, I agree with you. I mean, and it wasn't until you mentioned that I realized that even in my own mind, when I build adventures, there's a front door and there's a back door that's inevitably in the kitchen. And I mean, there again, it's like this. I have the building blocks of how I build inns, but when you draw a map for them, you're locking all that stuff in. And that's something that I think as Dungeon Master, at least for me, I've never actually drawn a map of one of the inns. I describe it, again, theater of the mind, but I just assume that there's a back door somewhere,
Right. And I even feel like if you don't prepare ahead of time, I'm sure there's been some Dungeon Masters who, when their players ask them if there's a back door, they immediately make one up, even if there wasn't one there already. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, well, they're asking about an escape route, and I actually didn't create one, but I feel bad now. No, just trap them in there. I mean, just let them figure it out. To make it hard. There is one encounter in there. The one I'll kind of do a little spoiler. With the gem where you really are very much trapped in the inn. It's like there is no escape. So you kind of have to figure out as players, how are we going to escape? Because there is none. There's literally no escape. So it's something you can go to the front door, but the front door is sealed. So and I wanted to include that one and kind of give the player something different at this setting. I'm sure this is, again, these are probably not that strange in a dungeon, but at the inn, it's something completely new. And I really do think that it'll be a great book for people who have never done this before and want to completely surprise their players. I think this will really work on that. If you've never done an encounter at your inn, this is going to be a great resource for you, because it has ideas for what you can do to really just throw a wrench in your players. They think they're going to have a long rest, and they're not going to have a long rest. They might get a nice meal and a drink. Yeah, it's going to be a long night. Yeah, that's the thing. So that was part of my inspiration, was to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. I love the idea of making the inn the adventure.
Yeah.
Normally that is where you leave. That's where you sleep, and that's it. But I like the fact that you go into the inn, and that may end up being your adventure, because you think what you're going to do is you're going to go and you're going to pretend eat, and you're going to pretend drink, and then you're going to go and do your long rest and get your spells back, and you're wake up in the morning, do the exact same thing over again, and leave. And I like this is not that. and I love
This
it.
is
I think
not
it's
that.
fantastic. I love it. I think it's fantastic.
This is not that. Yeah, I ran a one shot, like I said, that inspired me to do this whole book, where I think I tipped my players. I told them this is going to be a one shot adventure. It's not going to be a big deal. So they kind of understood that going into it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the idea was they go to Intuit Kingdom and they're supposed to meet with the king's advisor on a mission or something. And that the idea was they show up. It's late at night when they show up, and they have to stay at an inn. And I had no story even prepared for the king's advisor. I knew that the real adventure was going to be in the inn, so I prepared them incorrectly, essentially. Mm-hmm. And then when they got into the inn, there was a thing where the local law enforcement busts in because they're looking for a thief who had stolen a magical artifact, and that was the whole encounter. I mean, there was a thief at the inn with the magical item he stole, and they could discover who that was. They could help the law enforcement. They could fight the law enforcement. They could steal the artifact. There were so many different ways they could go with that one, and of course I made a great big map so that there were multiple rooms they could go into and lots of NPCs they could talk to flesh it out. But I still think it took them a little while to realize, like, oh, we're not getting out of here tonight. We're not going to go up to bed and go to sleep. We're gonna do something here. There's something going on here, you know.
Right.
And at some point they maybe an hour into the session, they're like, oh wait, we're doing this all in the inn, aren't we? And I said, yeah, we're gonna do the whole adventure here. So
yeah.
And it worked very well. I was surprised. It was something I tried off the cuff, and it worked very well. I think everybody got a big kick out of it. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great. From the standpoint of the inns that you create, do you have a favorite?
There's one I spent the most time on, and I think it became my favorite, which was the sort of the upscale fancy city inn, which ends up being, it's called the Moon and Arrow Inn. I made it. Let's see, it's 3 floors plus a cellar, so it was 4 maps. So it's rather large and it's pretty intricate. I think it has the most rooms too. So I really like doing that. But now I'm also working on one for our stretch goals. That's all pirate themed, and it's out all over the water. I don't know if that wasn't included in the preview I gave you. So, no. But it's at least 4 maps now too, and I might include like a cave. So it's kind of getting out there. And that's what I wanted to do, and actually wasn't really sure how I wanted to do it. So I gave up on it early and then revisited it. And I'm pretty happy with that so far. So, those ones are pretty good. I've also including a Feywild, which is a term I never really use, but a fairy land, an otherlander type inn, which may get complicated, but... Well, so I actually write about it in the book a little bit because it's supposed to be an enchanted place where the inn itself and the map is going to be a complete dump and a rundown place. But if the characters are enchanted to believe that it's a palace, you know. So I might have to do extra. I'm doing extra work for myself because now I have to create an inn that looks like a dump and one that's almost identical but also looks like a palace. So I'm probably going to do all that and.
Well, it's funny. There's a gentleman in the TTRPG community on Twitter who always does a Feywild map as well. Yeah. So when he designs maps, he always has a Feywild variant. So. Oh, variant of it, yeah. So. Yeah, I actually my last very long campaign I did, I had a lot of fairy. Ideas going into that one, so of course I wanted to experience this one and put it in the in book as well. So the pirate stuff sounds like a lot of fun though.
Oh yeah, I felt like I had to, and a lot of the people that were giving me feedback and my backers were like, you should do a pirate one. So
I think it's almost obligatory if you're talking about an inn/bar. You got to have a pirate one, right?
Yeah, and that really expands it. So now there's going to be 6 printed in the book, but when you order the book, you'll get additional. There's going to be 25 in maps, which is a lot, I think. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be a pirate and a Feywild and some different some other new locations too. So I covered a lot, I think.
Yeah.
In fact, I think now it's that, I hate to ever say this, but I was starting to run out of ideas. It's like, okay, now I have like 12 different, settings, what am I going to do next? So, I did put a lot of different options in there. But I'm sure I could come up with more if I had to.
All you gotta do
There's
is
a
look at
lot
your
of
local
options.
city. Look at your local city and pick one of those bars and make it a medieval bar or fantasy bar or whatever.
Right. Yeah, I have too many ideas. So my biggest problem with projects like this is that even as I'm working on them, I have to stay focused because I'm always thinking of the next thing I want to do.
Yeah.
So luckily I am having some success. Some might say a lot of success. I don't think we hit the a lot stage yet, but I'm having success on Kickstarter, so I'm going to keep doing them. And now it's just a matter of like I need to get on it and write and work to get them done, because I am having a lot of fun. So and people are liking them, so I want to keep going.
So at the time of filming, how many days are left on your Kickstarter?
If we're counting right now, there are 2 hours left.
Oh, geez.
So it's gonna be up, but it was so successful. Well, two things. I mean, if people see this and they want to get it, it will be hosted on TTRPG, the PDF at the very least, and I will try to figure out how to. I'll probably have physical copies on my website. Even if I don't have them, the PDF is done in such a way that you will very easily be able to take it to your local printer and get it printed out. Mm-hmm. If I don't have the option on TTRPG to have that, they do that print on demand option. But even without that, the PDF you get is going to be the file that I'm giving to my printer, and they can lay it out. People need to use their local printer more often. I'm gonna talk about local printers real quick, because in doing the Kickstarter, and I've worked with some other stuff too, I feel like a lot of people they feel like they need to go to overseas, we'll just say overseas, to get their printing done, and it's absolutely not true. They think they're going to save a lot of money, but you end up losing that money anyway when you talk about additional shipping costs and all the other hazards.
Delays.
And if you just delays, I have a couple Kickstarters I'm waiting on right now that are very delayed. I promise you, in your hometown, you have a print shop that is capable of doing great things.
Right. And
you can go to them and say, I have this file, can you print this out like this? And they will give you a price that is reasonable.
Yeah.
So I got a quote from a local printer who they do wedding invitations and stuff, but they do everything. These guys do everything. Right. And I said, here's what I want to do. And he's like, yeah, I'll take care of it. He gave me my price, and it was very comparable to going overseas. And I think it's worthwhile to keep that, support a local business. So.
Oh, I agree. Well, and also when you use a local printer, you can go back to them and say, hey, you can get a proof. You go back and say, hey, can you change this? It's changed within a day. A new proof is sent to you, as opposed to having to deal with geographically disparate print shops. Let's just say that.
Right. Yeah, I was as far as the business end goes, I was worried because I didn't want to. It's a lot of work to ship internationally. So, but again, I'm just trying to reassure people, like, take that digital copy you get. It's going to be great. It's high definition pictures. They're going to be able to print it and locally, and it'll be fine. So yeah. I can't remember why we got on this rant.
Oh no, we were talking about your Kickstarter, and then you're saying it's going to be on TTRPG. And what I'm going to do is, in the description below, I'm going to have links to the Kickstarter just so you can see how it went, because it'll be over by the time this gets edited. Yeah. But also link to the TTRPG version, so you can get it there, and anything else that Chris has done. So that way, if you like Chris's work, I'll point you more toward his portfolio, so that way you can check more out. Right.
There'll be links on my website. They can find my website and to everything. And if you find Status Effect Games on TTRPG, there's already free stuff. There's free maps on there you can download. You can get a kind of preview on there, and you'll be able to find all my products on there.
Excellent.
So if people like what I'm doing, and like I said, I'm getting pretty good feedback. It's really been enjoyable for me. because I haven't been doing this that long. I've been doing it for a long time, but this is my really early on in my foray into actually getting published out there. So I'm pretty happy with everybody so far. So, and they seem to be pretty happy with what I'm doing. So,
hey, it's
been a lot of fun.
Look,
Yeah,
I'm pretty much the
that.
authority. I thought it was a great idea. I love the implementation. I think you've taken a very thoughtful yet open-minded approach to ins from the standpoint of it is sandbox. You have all these great ideas and you can build off those, and I think DMs all over are really going to appreciate that. And I'm finally glad that someone has given the trusted and true in its due. Yeah,
well, thank you. I appreciate that. It means a lot to me. Like I said, everybody's really been really positive about the project. So I hope everybody enjoys it.
Yeah, I can almost guarantee you they will. But Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I already have a preview copy. I'll wait for my Kickstarter copy. But that being said, I can't wait to see what else you do. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, I appreciate you reaching out to me, and I'm happy to talk. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Next time you have anything coming up, let me know. I'd love to talk to you more about it.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. We're working all the time. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Have a good night.
Yeah, thank you. Good night.
Good night.